Good evening, everyone on Facebook. Welcome to I believe it's the third edition or fourth edition now of YR Live. And we are excited to be here with you this evening. My name is Brett Barker, and I'm privileged to serve as a National Committee Man for the Iowa Federation of Young Republicans. And we have Cole Button with us, who is our vice chair this evening. And we are going to be tag teaming our discussion with some of our additional congressional candidates. So if you got to see last week, we had a great discussion with the candidates from Iowa's 4th district. So we had all 5 of them on, had really good discussion. Hopefully folks learned a lot, had really good engagement from folks asking questions. So if you are watching, we would encourage you to put questions in the chat. We will attempt to get to those. And then we've had tons and tons of watches since. So we're really excited about that. We feel like we served a niche there to get the candidates in front of young Republican audience. So with that, who are the Young Republicans? We chartered last summer, rechartered. It's an organization that has been around a long time. So our first YR Live, if you want to go back and watch on our page, was with Senator Chuck Grassley, who, when he was a Young Republican, was actually a member of the Young Republicans. So that's how the organization goes back, even predates that. So rechartered, really energized. We felt the need to reach young voters. So we felt that was something that was missing in the Republican Party, and we wanted to fill that gap. Looking at 2018, wanted to correct some of those things in 2020 and really get young voters involved. So we're excited to be able to do that. We're looking for more folks to be involved. So we would definitely encourage you, if you are interested, to go to iowaYR.com and learn more about us there. Obviously, we have the social media presence that you're probably watching right now. And with that, we definitely could use your help. We'll be targeting some races throughout the rest of this year to help move the needle and elect more Republicans. Also, with that, we need financial resources as well. So Senator Grassley has a matching donation campaign that we're in the very final stages of. We want to get across the finish line on that. So if you like what we're doing and you want to help us have some resources to really impact elections this fall, we'd ask also for your support that way as well. And Senator Grassley would be matching those. So with that, welcome to our chat tonight. Again, if you are watching and just jumping in, we would love to take your questions for the candidates. So definitely go ahead and put those in the chat. So we have 3 that have agreed to join us tonight. So when we set these up, we took the information off the Iowa Secretary of State's website, invited every candidate that would be on a ballot for the primary election. And luckily we've been able to land most of those. So tonight from the 1st district, we have Ashley Hinson. And then from the 3rd district, we have Bill Schafer and then David Young. So we're looking forward to 3 really good discussions tonight. So welcome. And with that, we will go ahead and bring in our first guest, because I know you're here to watch them and not us, right, Cole?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, welcome, Ashley. How are you?
Good. How are you, gentlemen, this evening? Good evening.
We're doing very well. It's nice to meet you virtually. I was looking forward to probably meeting you somewhere around the state in person this year, but obviously we're not able to do that. So we're looking forward to having this discussion here throughout the internet with the new tools we're learning. So
thanks for being here.
Yeah. We're all pros at Zoom these days. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you've done a few of them, right?
Just a few, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we'll give you the floor to start with whatever opening you want to give to the folks watching, then we'll ask you some questions.
Sure. Absolutely. So, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to come speak with your group tonight virtually. I, too, am hopeful that we'll be able to do more of these in person sometime soon. But for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Ashley Hinson, and I live in Marion with my husband, Matt, and our 2 sons, Max and Jax, who are blissfully being quiet and away right now. So I'm very thrilled about that. We are busy and, living what I call the Iowa dream and the American dream. And that's exactly why I'm stepping up to run for Congress here in the 1st district. I'm currently serving in the Iowa House of Representatives. I'm in my 2nd term in the House, so have had some legislative experience. And before I decided to step up and run for the first race, I guess I ran for in 2016, I was a news anchor for 10 years. So spent 10 years telling Iowan stories, getting up out of bed at 2 a.m. So I figure if I can do that, I can do just about anything, forcing myself out of bed in the middle of the night. So had my professional career before I decided to step up and serve Iowans. My husband is a small business owner. He is part owner of an insurance agency based in Waterloo. So when I look at this first district, this district is representative of what my family and I bring to the table. We're families fighting for other families, fighting for Iowans. And my family actually has a long history of being a part of the first tier. Even though I grew up in the Des Moines area, my grandparents had a manufacturing company for decades, Hinson Manufacturing Products, which was based in Waterloo, and at one point employed, I think, just about 5,000 people. So definitely care about jobs, care about the economy, care about taking care of families and making sure that we are all able to live that American dream. So that's just a little bit about me, and I am thrilled to be able to be here tonight and take your questions.
Very good. Yeah, we have 3 kids upstairs, so you might hear them too. So look, I hide out in my laundry room for Zoom. So that's my Zoom room is around. So the flag's hiding the washing machine behind me.
Good. It looks good. Right flag.
There you go. You answered some of the questions there already. So one I will go to is, what do you feel something that Congress has done well, and where do you feel there's the biggest room for improvement?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think right now there's a lot of room for improvement in what's happening in Congress. I think we're seeing what's wrong with politics right now, where people are using a situation where we are supposed to be serving the American people, and they're using that for political advantage. And I think that's exactly what's wrong with Washington, D.C. And what I bring to the table is that dose of Iowa common sense that I think is missing and clearly is not on display. I think when you look at what Congress has, they did to get relief to people recently, but when I look at what really helps drive Iowa's economy, the tax cuts long term are the biggest driver. I mean, people deserve to have more of their hard-earned money. One thing that I would like to see continue going forward are those tax benefits for pass-through corporations, because ultimately those small business owners, those are your job creators. And when you look at what I think I could bring to the table as an advocate for them, that's real livelihoods at stake. And I think that's something that I think we could improve on, but something I think Congress did do well is trying, I guess it's been over 2 years now, but trying to make sure that that money is going back to taxpayers as much as possible.
Cole, got any questions? I'll kick one over to you.
No, I think she answered that one very well. I guess one question I'd have is, what do you see as being a unique challenge for being an Iowa Congresswoman as opposed to maybe New York or California?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, our industry, while some of those states do have parallel industries, New York has ag. I think Iowa, though, is a unique state in that not only do we have our suburban areas, which are strong in manufacturing and have a good business background, but we also have that mixture of strong ag. And so I think I don't see that as a challenge. I see it as an exciting part of being a representative from Iowa, because there is so much variety in what you go to represent every day and advocate for. One thing that I have tried to do in my current role as a state representative, and something I think I would love to continue in my role as a congresswoman, is to continue my constituent advisory committee. I don't think it's realistic for any one person to be an expert in any of these areas, or not them anyway. You can bring maybe an expertise in one area to the table, but when you look at the breadth of issues that you face as a lawmaker, and I've discovered this here at the state level in Iowa, there's no way you can be an expert immediately every single one of them. And you have to make decisions sometimes very quickly. So in order to gain the right context and perspective, you have to be able to reach out to your constituents who are those experts in their field. That's one thing that I think is exciting about this district. There's such a variety in the types of industry that we have and the types of people that I look to represent, that I look forward to being able to continue to have those conversations, continue that learning experience every day. It's an exciting part of the job.
Great. And you touched on your experience at the state legislature. Is there any particular accomplishment that you'd like to make sure people are aware of, or anything you're particularly proud of?
Sure. I think the first thing I would talk about is my leadership role as the chair of the Transportation Committee. I led that committee for one session. I stepped down when I knew I was going to be for Congress, and I wanted to make sure that that committee had someone who could devote all the time necessary. And so I am very proud of the bills that we passed out of that. I think we passed 21 bills out in my session of leadership, and 21 bills, and 20 of them were bipartisan. And I think that is exactly the kind of leadership we need right now. It's looking at all of those policies that that do bring everyone to the table and coming to an agreement and having that conversation. That's what I'm hearing from everyone that they're hungry for. So I think that's definitely an accomplishment to be able to lead a committee and bring that many bills out of a committee that are bipartisan in nature.
Great. Well, thank you. Brett, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
There's one in the chat here I'll ask from Nathaniel. So his concern is for disabled people trying to get gainful employment, where Social Security oftentimes will punish folks that then gain an income, and how, so he's looking for ideas on how to fix that system for folks on disability or unemployment that have that cliff in front of them on those programs.
Mm-hmm. And I would ask him to definitely reach out to me with his situation so I can learn more about it. I think one of the key things in learning how to fix a problem like that is the first step is knowing what's broken. So with that situation, I would urge him to contact me so I can do a little bit more digging on that. Because he's the one who's experiencing that every day. One thing I would say is the first step toward looking at a fix like that is to know what the problem is so you to fix it. So I admittedly would probably need some more information to be able to answer that question effectively. So I would urge him to contact me.
Awesome. And then there's another one here from Ashley, which is a good one. As a young
Ashley, great name.
Yep, exactly. So
Yep.
Ashley wants to know, as a young person and a woman, can you talk more about the importance of getting more people in both of those demographics elected?
Well, I think the first step is, well, in my case, I have a wonderful spouse who's supportive of me, but I think the first step is getting over any fear that you might not be qualified to step up and do this. One thing I talk with a lot of groups about is you are qualified. You're an American citizen. You care about your country. That makes you qualified to be willing to stand up and serve. So I think the first step is getting over any fear that you might have that you're not. I think that's especially true for young women. And I also think it's true for young people. I'm 36 years old, and I still remember when I made the decision to leave my professional career, I had the angst of, should I leave? Is this the right thing to do for my family? Is it the right time in my life? And much like many things that happen in your life, you can argue about the place and maybe that's not all right for you, but there's never a good time, there's never a right time, there's never a right place. You just have to take the plunge and do it. And I think that's the fighter spirit in me, but I encourage everybody to step up and do that as much as possible and get over that fear. And there's a lot worth fighting for. And I think the more we focus on what we're fighting for and our conservative principles, then makes it a very easy decision to step up and run.
Very good. And we had somebody in the chat point out that you're eligible to join the YRs. So we might have a conversation about that after we get done tonight, because
I should.
You're like
I'm
me.
still young enough.
Yep. Yeah, you're like me. We still qualify as young, even though some of our other officers like to remind me I'm closer to aging out than they are. But
Well,
yeah, as far as
yeah.
young people being involved, besides being elected, how else would you suggest that maybe they get involved with the process if they don't even know where to start or how it works? Where are places they can engage?
Well, I think, I look at all of the different levels of, if you're interested in government in general and public policy, there are so many different ways along the spectrum for you to engage. You can get involved with your local planning and zoning commission. The gal who clerked for me is 25 years old, and she just joined the Latino Affairs Commission in the state of Iowa. She's not interested in serving yet, but she wanted to be involved. There are lots of ways where you can learn more about the process, still be able to advocate for issues that you care about, and maybe not have like the time commitment, the financial commitment, or the stress of taking on a specific race like what I'm doing or what a state legislator would do. So there are so many different, I guess, places along the spectrum to engage that I would suggest starting there. I know it sounds like a nerdy thing to do, but I spent a lot of time as a news anchor reading the minutes, meeting minutes and agendas for my local happenings. And there is so much that you can learn from just even engaging at that level as a citizen. So I think starting there, figuring out what your passion is, and then asking people who are already there serving where you might fit. I think, people want other people to succeed. It's inherent that my mom told me this once. I was playing in a violin competition and I was really nervous. And my mom said, Ashley, everyone out there is rooting for you. And I believe that to be true. I think that people are always wanting other people to succeed. And the golden rule is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I think, asking for help, asking for guidance, figuring out where you might fit, and then starting there. That's my advice to people for trying to figure out where your place is.
Very good. And I'd say also find good campaigns, people running for office that you believe in, and help them out. So I'm sure
Yep.
Ashley and others we're speaking with tonight would love for young people to help them out and get some voters contacted, because we're in a unique time. And I think we as young Republicans are well suited for the technological challenges of how to reach voters in this environment. So I think these campaigns need you. So,
absolutely. Well, and I think it's a great opportunity to get a hold of people. I talked to somebody today on the phone who called me, and I take questions from people on the phone. And I talked to a man who lives in Marshall County today and was just curious about what I brought to the table. And we talked for probably half an hour. So people are home and they want to talk right now and they want to engage, which is exciting.
and we do have a good question here. It says, thanks for your service and leadership in the Iowa State House. What do you think is Congresswoman Finkenauer's biggest vulnerabilities in a general election?
Well, there are, from my perspective, a lot. I think number one, saying one thing and doing another. It's incredibly challenging to be able to continue that. I think we're seeing that with her votes in Washington, D.C. and what she ran on. They just don't match up. I think it's one thing to be able to say you're for small businesses and then support one of the biggest pieces of legislation that would gut right to work in the state of Iowa. So I think that's a huge vulnerability for her. And I think it's just a matter of pointing that out to voters. I'm going to make my case, and I think it's a solid case to make.
Very good. And there's also another one in the chat we'll go to. It says, how can we get quality education regarding American history back in the public school system? And where do you see opportunity for change in today's public education?
Yeah. So I have a 7 and 9-year-old, and as you can imagine, I'm working on trying to homeschool them. I think looking for additional teachable moments in my life and how I work with them as a parent has been an incredible eye-opening learning experience for me. Kids are sponges, and they need to understand their heritage and history. My oldest son, Max, is actually reading the Rush Revere book series right now. And so at night we go lay down and we talk about how important, I mean, the horse is named Liberty in the book. I mean, this is a whole book series that's about educating about how important American history is. So I think we absolutely need to put another focus on this. I mean, right behind you are our liberties we prize, our rights we will maintain. I mean, we need to make sure that our students are learning the importance of the people who came before them. And I'll just give you a quick synopsis here about, I hadn't really been to Washington, D.C. until I decided to step up and run for this office. And every time I have a chance to go there, I now do something, I hate to say touristy, but I think it's more, I do something American every time I'm there. I go visit the Lincoln Memorial. I've seen the Constitution. We've gone to the National Archives. I think our students need to be learning all of the things about the people who came before them and our founding fathers. So anything we can do to continue to put an emphasis on that in our public school system, private school system, homeschool system, whatever system works best for their students, then we should be doing that.
Yeah, no, I love doing that too. When I go to DC, I always try to pick one new place if I have time that I haven't been. So I think that's
yeah,
great.
A lot of treasures there.
There are a lot of treasures there. With that, we have about a minute left or so. So are there any closing thoughts you want to leave us with this evening?
Sure. I'm running a very competitive race here in the 1st District, and this is a seat that is a national target. We are consistently being called one of the top 10 races in the country, and I think that's because of the strength of our campaign. It's in the people that are supporting our campaign. We have over 450 grassroots leaders who have signed up to support us. We just released our 20 county chairs this week. And I think that the number of individual donors who have stepped up to support my campaign signals that people are ready for a change here in the 1st District. So if you're interested in learning more about our campaign, we would love to engage with you and take your help however you can offer it. Many of you have many great gifts that you can bring to the table. We call it time, talent, and treasure. So if you are willing to contribute any of those things, email info@ashleyhinson.com. My Facebook page it's easily searchable, but it's facebook.com/AshleyHinson, Iowa. And again, we would love to engage with you and let's win back this seat for the people of Iowa.
Very good. Thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have candidate Bill Schafer, who we will go ahead and bring in. Okay, give him a second to connect to audio here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hey,
Thanks
Bill.
for joining us.
Doing well. How are you? All of you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on tonight with us. So to get started, maybe tell us a little bit about your background or whatever you'd like to start with an opening comment. We'll go through some Q&A and then we'll flash a 1-minute warning at you when time's about up, and that'll be your cue that to leave whatever final thoughts.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you. So I'm Bill Schafer. I'm running for obviously U.S. Congress in Iowa's District 3. And so here's my background. I grew up in the Army. My father was a 23-year veteran, a Vietnam era type fella, and raised the family around the country. And then I joined the Army and spent 32 years in the infantry, raising a family around the country. I have 3 adult children. My wife and I, Robin, and I have been married for 36 years, and our kids are in Georgia and Arizona, with one here right now helping me, but she'll be going back to Texas where she's a teacher here pretty soon. I think it's important to note on the career that I retired as a colonel, and that's only important because of the jobs. And I can answer any questions about my career of interest, but in the last portion of my career as a colonel, I worked in the Pentagon on a training team that provided briefings and updates to the 4 vice service chiefs for the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines to talk about training initiatives that may or may not need to be funded in the current year. Then I commanded a brigade. It was a training brigade, about 2,000 folks, and we were responsible for training and readiness for the reservists and guardsmen who were next to deploy overseas. We trained about 15,000 a year. And then that's what brought me to Iowa. The Army brought me to Iowa to work for a 3-star headquarters as an operations officer and a chief of staff. And that headquarters was responsible for the training readiness of the entire continental United States. So again, I tell you those experiences to say that is my background. Those are my credentials. And I hope that you see in that the level of experience, problem solving, strategic thinking that we should expect from our U.S. Congressman. I'm running for office because about 15 months ago, I'd never thought about politics, but I found myself increasingly complaining about politics. And I see myself as a problem solver and a problem fixer. And so at that time, I was working as a director of human resources for the Army as a civilian. But I saw, I'd already been complaining about the leftward shift of our country. And then in the 18 election cycle, we lost the House, and specifically this state that I chose to retire to, which I thought was conservative, lost significantly, causing us to have 3 out of 4 seats in the House to be Democrat Republican. So, I had a conversation with my wife about, man, I'm really not interested in politics, but maybe this is the right thing for me to do. As a problem solver, I made the decision to take action rather than just sit around the coffee table complaining about it.
Very good.
I believe very strongly. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one thing that I might have missed when I'm trying to monitor the chat. So if I missed something, I apologize. You mentioned you chose to retire to Iowa. What brought you to the state of Iowa, and what were the qualities of the state, and what was that decision-making process like?
Yeah, so there's probably 3 parts to it. The simple answer is the Army brought me here. The Army brought me a lot of places in my career, and over 32 years, you move a lot. I spent my entire life moving. I've lived no longer than about 4 years in any one spot. Now I have been in Iowa about 8 years, 8 or 9, something like that. And after we retired, we stayed for the job. We got hired. They were paying me to be a director of human resource, pretty senior position. Life was good. But then we started looking, our family is spread we have extended family in New York, parents and brothers and sisters in Maryland. I got a brother in Oklahoma. I already told you where my kids were: Georgia, Texas, Arizona. And we were trying to figure out, what's the best place for us to retire to. And then really just dawned on us. We love the people here. We love the conservative values of Iowa. I'm an outdoors guy. I like the outdoors of Iowa. So my wife and I made the decision that we were going to retire and make Iowa our home. And that decision was made probably about 2 years after I retired. So about 2016.
Very good. I'm always curious. I'm a transplant Iowan myself, so I always wonder what that process is like. It's a well-kept secret.
Well,
so.
Trust me, it was much to the frustration of my mother.
So with that, we do have a obviously competitive primary there in the 3rd district. So why do you feel that you're the best candidate to represent voters in the 3rd district in November?
Well, again, I have to have the opportunity to execute. I learned early on in the Army that only in execution can you prove to your men what you really are. But I believe the answer to that is, if you look at my history, if you look at my training in the Army and the senior level positions I have, you will see the experiences that lend themselves well to this level of problem solving, strategic thinking, and I think that's certainly a key. The ability to see a problem long range, break it into parts, and we call them intermediate objectives, but hit those objectives along the way, and be patient about how long it takes to solve a problem from a strategic sense. The other half of the answer is what I will prove to you over time, and these are my words. I am a true conservative. I absolutely believe very strongly in our Constitution. I believe in the constitutional federal republic that the Constitution is designed to protect in terms of being the law of the land. I am absolutely against progressive politics, which decreases freedoms and increases the level of federal government involvement in your life. And so if you want a politician that's really an infantryman that wants to go solve problems for you, that will deliver conservative values to your district, will serve you and the nation, and not make decisions or compromise where compromise shouldn't exist, because I'm concerned about the next election. I will deliver conservative values and I will serve you.
Okay, we'll kick it over to Cole.
Thanks, Brett. So one issue that's very prominent over in this district is the recent flooding that we experienced in 2019. A lot of families and farms have been just completely devastated by the flooding. If elected to Congress, what do you think should be prioritized with flood relief and future flood prevention, or do you have any plans regarding that?
I have some thoughts. I'm not sure that they qualify as plans yet, but I've studied that problem, and what I learned was it's a very complex problem that has multiple pieces to it. It goes along with my theme of, the federal republic. When you talk to folks, whether they're state politicians or individuals, we immediately jump to the fault of the federal government. And the reality is, in that particular instance, is a great example of where there are local privatized failings. There are certainly state failings, and as well there are federal failings. I believe my experience lends me well to help solve the problems associated with the Corps of Engineers. I'm familiar with them, but I'm more importantly, I'm familiar with the problem solving, of the Department of Defense. But in addition, I think our governor did a pretty good job and went to an informative team, a task force, if you will, that was providing updates and helped her deliver some of the relief that she was able to get in, I think, the January timeframe. But I also think that maybe some of those team members were wrong, and I would encourage her to allow me to, as a U.S. Congressman, to be part of that team, but also encourage us to bring in folks from the other states, as well as the state representatives in Iowa that have responsibilities geographically for the areas of the flooding, and that way we would bring the four parts of the problem: the interstate issues, the private issues, the state issues, and the federal government level issues into one problem-solving team. And so that's the way to solve the problem. We need to now get ahead of the problem so that we make decisions and place the resources against that problem now before the next flood occurs. I think that's another thing the government does often, and I think in this case, it appears to me that from the last flood to this one, we didn't do a whole lot to shore up the levees.
Okay, well, thank you. And one more question I have is, what do you think about the government's response to the COVID-19 epidemic?
I'm very frustrated with where we are with COVID-19. Certainly there are legitimate concerns. There's conflicting information. It doesn't appear to me that the statistics bear out the draconian kind of response we've seen across the country. Our own governor, I think, initially did a very good job of balancing her role as a governor with the actual authority to shut things down. But then, you know, with the concerns, with the human emotional concerns associated with the increasing numbers and the things we were seeing out of New York, we started to increase the restrictions here in Iowa. And, you know, I think we started to then make a mistake, not the kind of mistakes that were made in other states, which gets you to my blunt answer. I'm very concerned with balancing our freedoms and relinquishing our freedoms to the government in areas that I do not believe they have the constitutional authority to take, making people shut their businesses down, picking who can open and who can't open and how much they can open at any particular time. We have said in this state many times, you know, I trust the Iowans to do the right thing. Well, that's the right answer in my view. As a governor, as the president, put out the guidelines associated with the information you have, the science that you have on the threat, and then let Iowans execute. The balance between the science of leadership and the art of leadership it's tough, and that's where you take the emotion out and make a decision that's for the greater good. So in the long run, a lot of concern across the country with the amount of authorities we've relinquished to governors that I don't think is healthy for a federal republic or free people.
Sorry, one question here in the chat that we will go to. When it comes to representing a congressional district and doing casework, you often have to help people that you don't agree with ideologically. What are your thoughts on how best to help these types of people?
Well, listen, there's no expectation to agree with everybody, even in your own ideology. The idea that everybody could agree it's untenable. So I believe the answer is twofold. First, going back to my theme, instead of arguing about a particular policy or particular topic, let's talk about level of responsibility. I believe that if we can get folks to see the logic of the federal government not getting involved in certain topics, then we can have a more personal discussion about how to solve that problem at a more local level, the state, or even more close to them. The second thing is when you're making decisions for large groups of people, and as a U.S. Congressman, I will be representing us as part of the country. You have to take emotion out of and that's tough because a lot of these issues are emotional. But when you take the emotion out, you are better set to make a decision for the entire group rather than for the small group that might have the problem. So I hope those two things allow me, and I've seen some synergy gained in that as I've walked the streets of these towns and had the opportunity to talk even to Democrats who we had very cordial conversations about it, and we agreed on level of responsibility even if we didn't agree on a particular topic.
With that, we have about a minute left. So what closing comments do you want to leave us with tonight?
Well, listen, we are already in the primary season. I really want to thank the Young Republicans for allowing this opportunity, reaching out to me. I find it very professional to have teammates reach out to the candidates who are very busy and offer these kind of opportunities. What I would say to all the Iowans in District 3 is, listen, don't be told who the nomination needs to go to for the Republican Party. Study the candidates. I hope you select me, but study the candidates and get your friends and families to study the candidates and get out and vote in the primary so that the district has the right representative picked by the people.
Very good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, want to give your web address one more time since I cut you off there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trained. You can find me at schaferforcongress.com, SCHAFERFOR Congress.com. My number is 515-850-8100. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate the opportunity. God bless all of you.
Appreciate you coming on, and we've had even more questions that we could get to. So I apologize if you didn't get to your questions. I appreciate all the engagement tonight. So
Tell them
thanks.
to shoot them to Facebook.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and with that, we will bring in our remaining candidate, which is former Congressman David Young.
Hey, David, thanks for joining us.
It's great to see you both. And hello, everybody listening and watching.
Yeah, so to start, we'll do it like we did with the other two. We'll give you a little bit of time to give us some opening comments, introduce yourself, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A.
Sure.
When there's about a minute left, we'll give you a sign and let you know it's about time to wrap up.
Okay. Well, it's great to be here with you all. And I'm here in Van Meter in my home. I'm a 7th generation Iowan, for those who don't know me, and my background, and born and raised here in the district. Graduated from high school here in the district and college here in the district, and reside in Van Meter. And so my mom and dad were born and raised here, my grandparents. And so got a rich history here in the 3rd district. And, I'm running to make sure that we keep this constitutional republic going for the next generations and 10 generations after that. And we need leadership right now in this district, and we don't have it. We need a voice, and this district is voiceless. My opponent ran on being kind of Main Street, common sense, problem solving, and she's done everything but that. And she ran really, really hard to the left. She votes with Nancy Pelosi 98% of the time. You have to reflect your district. You have to reflect the people who you represent. You got to make tough decisions. You got to lead. And it had been an honor to be Senator Grassley's chief of staff and work for the people of Iowa for 7 years. And then I ran for Congress and was just honored to represent the people of the 3rd district for 4 years. And so I know what the job is. I know how to approach it. I'll hit the ground running like I did before. And get to work right away for the people of the 3rd district, because we need somebody who works, shows up, and leads.
Very good. And you did hit on the race here. And so with the primary going on, how do you feel, or why do you feel that you're the best candidate to represent Republicans on that general election ballot in November?
Well, first of all, I know this district very, very well, having been born and raised here. I graduated from high school and college. So I know this district, I know her people, and they know me. And so I've got a head start there with just that relationship. And then being able to hit the ground running, getting in there right away, getting to work on issues. I know the issues. I know who the players are and who to work with and not work with and how to approach these things. And so I'm taking it right to Cindy Axney right now. We feel good about where we are.
Very good. And Cole, I think, has some questions, so I'll kick it over to him to ask a couple.
Thanks, Brett. Go ahead, Cole.
Thanks, Brett. Well, I guess for my first question is, where can I get one of those Abraham Lincoln posters with like that?
Just go online and hit Abraham Lincoln poster, and maybe that'll lead you to it.
Yeah, I'll probably find a million different results. Secondly, obviously, one thing that's been going on in this district is the flooding of 2019. What are your thoughts or plans regarding flood relief or future flood prevention?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to make sure that the Army Corps of Engineers, that their number one priority is to protect people and protect their property. And it's not about preserving a species or recreation. We need to make sure that the people who live along the river, that they are protected. And when they're not, and when it's a failure of the Army Corps of Engineers and the federal government, that they're compensated for it. I'd also like to see more authority given to states and localities to do what they need to do, because they know that river and those areas better than anyone else, and give them that authority to petition their government, work with the Corps of Engineers to have some real input, some real citizens input, to have a say in what happens with projects. And as well, these district commanders that command each district with the Army Corps of Engineers, sometimes they come into each district for maybe 2 or 3 years. They learn about the area, they learn about the projects, and then they leave. And so there's no real investment by those district commanders to want to really get the job done. And there's no accountability there either. And so we need to make sure that it's about people, there's input, and there's accountability.
Very good.
Thank you very much. And a follow-up question I have is, what do you feel about the government's response to the COVID-19 epidemic?
Well, we're learning more and more about, first of all, what COVID-19 is, and then the effects of that with what the federal government did. And so this is the first time in history the federal government and state governments kind of took the position of kind of pausing the economy. And we're learning a lot from that. I believe that we can keep people working, keep the economy going, and at the same time, make sure that we are taking precautions to protect people, making sure that those who know what this disease is and how it will affect them, this virus, those with compromised immune systems, that they take certain responsibilities to make sure that they are taking care of themselves. We need to make sure that we, on the front end, make sure we know how to build up our immune system, invest in research and development for new therapies and a vaccine. And we learned as well that, we shortchanged ourselves on this a bit, because we learned during this crisis that there are some things that we couldn't do on our own, and we were dependent on foreign governments, particularly China. We need to make sure that we are never in this position again. So if we learned anything good out of this, it's number one, the resilience of the American people and their compassion for one another to help each other. Two, that we need to make sure that we can take care of ourselves, and that we need to start producing and manufacturing those antibiotics, those drugs, those masks, that other protective equipment, ventilators here at home, and that we have a stockpile of them as well, just in case this ever happens again. But the best thing to do to make sure that we can get this economy up and running again is to put people back to work in a responsible, judicious manner where we can get the economy going again. People are, we're wired to be productive and active. That's why the Lord gave us a brain and hands and feet. And we're not meant to be idle and just sitting by. And we're also very social beings, right? We're meant for relationships and to be together and not distance. And I believe that we can have that balance, and we can do this, and we have to. If we don't, we're going to have a lot of poverty out there. And poverty breeds some horrible things that can happen to you. You know that suicide rates can go up. Other diseases can come about. The mental, emotional strain and stress, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, domestic violence. And so we can't fall into that trap. We have to keep things going, and we have to make sure that that American dream is there for the next generation and the next and the next. So we have to rebuild this economy, and we can keep people safe at the same time. And I want to be a part of that discussion.
Very good. Yeah, you hit on a few there. As a pharmacist, I'm super concerned about the drug supply chain and all those other things, but we have a bunch of questions, so I won't sidetrack us on any of that. But a good follow-up on the COVID question comes from Ashley, and it's, how are we going to keep Main Street businesses thriving after all of this?
Yeah. Well, we have to make sure that we give them certainty, so they know what the game plan is going to be and what the rules are should this happen again. Allow them that creativity that they have within them to make sure that as certain rules and restrictions may come along, that they can react to them and not just be shut down. Because I think there are ways where we can have restaurants and retail shops and other businesses open at the same time, protecting others. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that there's certainty out there, and we involve the people who it affects the most, the entrepreneurs, the small business owners, larger employers, the workers. They have to have a seat at the table. And I tell you what, I'm very thankful that we have Kim Reynolds as our governor, a red state governor, and not a governor like they have in California or Michigan, where they just shut everything down. And that gets into the whole issue about authority and our rights and our freedoms. And that's a larger discussion as well.
Another question coming out of the chat here is from Allie. It says, out of 435 members of Congress, you were labeled America's hardest working congressman when you were in office. what are some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of, and what current issues do you think Congress needs to tackle?
Well, on a macro level, I'm very, very proud that we were able to pass tax relief for the American worker, for Iowa's hardworking families, small businesses, and larger employers. And I trust people. They work hard. They deserve to keep more of their hard-earned dollars and take that money home and use it in the way that they want to, right? Because we know how the government spends money. So I'm very proud that we did that. And by doing that and partnering with President Trump, we saw this economy just boom, one of the greatest economies this world has ever seen. And to get back to that, we have to have that same partnership. You need a Republican Congress, a Republican Senate, and a Republican president to get that back on track, because we've done it before. Also, we rebuilt the military. The military, our service members, our soldiers, they were so underfunded. They didn't have the proper maintenance of their equipment, and sometimes they didn't have what they needed, the readiness that they needed to go into battle. And we rebuilt the military. And I'm very, very proud of that, because, you know, we all know people who have donned the uniform. We thank them for that service. And we need to make sure always that they are always prepared and always protected. I'm proud of what we did for our veterans by helping them get some choice and some health care. If there are some situations where they couldn't travel that very far out, or there wasn't that specialist in their hospital or network, that they could get that health care where they needed to. And then just on a personal level, you know, the Veterans Crisis Line, we found out that it was not working properly, and we wanted to make sure that our veterans were taken care of. I introduced a bill, a bipartisan bill, to hold the Veterans Administration accountable and report to us where the shortcomings were and why. And then we fulfilled those voids with, you know, new telephone equipment, new staffing, what was needed to make sure that our veterans were serviced and given that help that they need, those that have those emotional and mental kind of war wounds. As well, when the bird flu came about in 2015, the Department of Homeland Security came before a committee I was on, the Appropriations Committee, and they laid out their Homeland Security plan. And there was nothing there in terms of any kind of protection of our food supply and biosecurity, because as we know, you know, viruses, and they can be weaponized. And so I got a bill passed to make sure that the Homeland Security Department was always putting our food supply and our agriculture at the forefront to make sure that families had a safe and affordable meal on their table every night. Those are the few things that I'm proud of. I'm really proud of as well, just our staff in Creston and Council Bluffs and Des Moines, who did that casework every day, who fought every day for the grandma in Guthrie Center or the uncle in Glenwood who had an issue with Social Security or an agriculture payment or the IRS. And you fight for them every day against the bureaucracy. We were really good at that and making sure that people had a voice there to help with them petition their government.
I'm going to find a question here that I was looking for. It's from Nathaniel. So it'll be our last one, and then we'll have you leave some closing comments after that.
Sure.
Where did it go? It says, Congressman Young, when it comes to government and its duty to constituency, what does compassionate government mean to you?
Compassionate government is government acting closest to the people. And that's why I want to relegate as much power as possible to states and local authorities to do that governance, because that's where you have those relationships with those who are at the table making decisions. And that's where people can then sit down with those people making those decisions and have a real voice and be at the table to help shape policy, which fits them, which they know best for themselves and their families. And so I think that's very, very important, to as much local control of government as we can get, and then as much accountability as we can put forth with the federal government, and making sure that they are not you know, there's a lot of waste, fraud, abuse, mismanagement out there. Make sure we tackle that, and make sure we are setting forth policies that have a level playing field and that allow people to be lifted up and not held down by any specific policy.
Very good. And we're about out of time, but there is one question that just came in. I do want to give you a chance to answer, because it's one that I've seen both in the 4th district and the 3rd district get a lot of attention, and that's red flag laws, and your opinion and philosophy on those and potential legislation that can come out of that.
Yeah, well, so we're seeing a lot of states put forth some what they call red flag systems or legislation. Sometimes it's not even legislation. It's very well intended probably, but I think there's some real problems out there. If someone's coming in, a part of the government, maybe it's a municipality or part of a police force, going in and taking away somebody's gun, their constitutional right without due process, I think that's extremely dangerous. We're talking about a constitutional right here. And we need to make sure that our Constitution, that framework, due process is applied in those situations. You have to know that who you're facing, you have to have a right to appeal, you have to have evidentiary standards, you have to have a nonpartisan judge there. And you have to make sure that if by chance through due process, your weapon is taken away, that there's a time limit on it. And you have a right to appeal. And if you win that appeal, you get your Second Amendment rights back right that second. And so due process has always got to be at the forefront and at the table on these things.
Sure. And with that, I know we didn't get to all the questions in the chat. It's been really interactive tonight, which I'm thankful for. So because of that, maybe if you can let people know where they can find you to ask questions after this or reach out to your campaign, and then leave us with any closing thoughts you have. Yeah,
I mean, youngforiowa.com. You can send an email, info@youngforiowa.com. And we are in the situation right now where here we are. It'd be better if we were all together, but in a way, more people can also from a distance, interact here in the situation. But I look forward to getting back to a sense and semblance of normalcy where we can get out and be together again, and get in front of people and have those conversations. And I got a fire in my belly. We have to take the seat back. We have to keep the 4th district, win back the 1st, and we've got a real chance at the 2nd district as well. And I tell you, all roads to get that gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hand goes through Iowa. That road goes through Iowa. So everybody on this tonight, make the phone calls, put a yard sign out, send out the emails, knock on a door when we can, and make sure that your voice is heard. And elections really matter. And we're finding that out more and more. And this election may be one of the most important elections it is in my lifetime, especially when you're dealing with, people on the other side, presidential candidates who are self-avowed socialists, who are putting socialist policies through unabashed in the United States Congress. Let's go to battle. Let's fight that fight. We have to. We don't have a choice. Our founding framers and fathers, put their lives at risk for this. Our veterans and our military put their uniforms on and risk this. And so we have to do the same in any way we can. And we can win the seat back. I've won it with the district, with the people twice before. We can do it again. And things are looking really good for the fall. I'm happy where we're going. We've got the momentum. Let's win this together. And let's take up issues for the people. We the people. That's what matters.
Very good. Thank you for joining us tonight. I think it was a great discussion. We're thrilled to be able to do this for voters across the state that, like you said, can't make it out in person right now. Yeah. So with that, before we close, I will plug next week. We have the 2nd district candidates invited. So we plan to do this again, same time, same place in 1 week for the 2nd district. So if you're interested in the 4th district, it's available on demand. This will be available when we're done if you missed part of it and want to watch it. And then we have the 2nd district next week. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Congressman Young. Thanks Cole for being the co-pilot tonight, and we'll see everybody later.